Exile has tested you, my brother. Now let's see what God has to say. I've dealt with far darker shadows than you, Exile. I exiled an animal. Now you almost resemble a man, Karui. I offered the gift of exile, and you used it to reinvent yourself. I couldn't wish for a more potent instrument. It is woman's purpose to tempt and try the will of man. Welcome to the greatest of arenas, duelist. God is watching. You'd bite the master that called you here, witch? This world is an illusion, Exile. It is time you saw what real sacrifice is. Touch of God! Tested you, my brother. Now let's see what God has to say. I've dealt with far darker shadows than you, Exile. I exiled an animal. Now you almost resemble a man, Karui. I offered the gift of exile, and you used it to reinvent yourself. I couldn't wish for a more potent instrument. It is woman's purpose to tempt and try the will of man. Welcome to the greatest of arenas, duelist. God is watching. You'd bite the master that called you here, witch? This world is an illusion, Exile. It is time you saw what real sacrifice is. Touch of God! stood between man and nightmare. Will you take my place, Exile?
What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power. We felt your deeds. Felt their shockwaves ripple through the void. You have our attention. Now you must keep it. Your limits will be tested. The stars themselves will bear silent witness. How far will you bend before you break?
like the cool blue light, like the cool blue light, like the cool blue light, like the cool blue light.
Hey guys, Dante here, back with another video, and in this one we'll be doing something a bit different. I'll be showcasing you guys the build that I'm currently playing, which is a Penance brand of Dissipation, Hierophant with Transcendence. Now, this is not your normal Penance brand of Dissipation in stacker or whatever. This is something a bit more different and something a bit more complicated. Let's go what Transcendence is actually about. So, armor applies to fire, cold, and lightning damage taken from hits instead of physical damage. So basically, your armor applies to fire, cold, lightning taken from hits, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Now, the other problem that this raises is physical damage, right? How do you mitigate physical damage? Well, we mitigate physical damage by stacking a lot of physical damage reduction. Pretty easy in concept, but pretty difficult to do in game because the physical damage reduction is not as easy to get as resistances, right? So what are we gonna do? Let's go over how the build works, right? So we are stacking armor. As you can see in highlight, I got 65,000 armor. If I go in a zone where I can get my merc as well. So over here, I got 72,000 armor and I got 83% PDR, right? Pretty good, pretty good. So how does the build work? We are stacking armor. We are going over getting our resistance to 78% because Transcendence lowers it by 15% maximum to all maximum elemental resistances. So in theory, you should be locked at 60, but Lore Weave overrides the downside of Transcendence, making your maximum resistance 78, right? Pretty good. So besides that, we are stacking a lot of physical damage reduction via armor. Again, additional physical damage reduction here. We're getting adrenaline from this. We are stacking 12 endurance charges for physical damage reduction and elite reduction. We are... what is my Watcher's Eye? God damn it, this one. So we're getting another physical damage reduction while affected by determination. And you kind of get the idea, right? I get armor tattoos, all that good stuff. So, yeah. Where does the damage come from? The damage comes from Doriani Mercenary. So let's go over the the Mercenary. So it's a classic Doriani's build. I'm using Crown of the Tyrant for additional flat damage because we are investing heavily into survivability, so we need to get damage from somewhere else. I got a wand which gives my Merc endurance charges, frenzy charges, and power charges with zealotry effect and chance to blind. This shield, I got him reduced damage taken from crits. With effect of non-curse auras from his skills, so basically buffing up Wrath and Zealotry. The way you craft this shield is basically you get a Redeemer Influence Colossal Tower shield, which is the base highest armor, and you spam fossils with crit and aura effect. I think it's bound, and I forgot the name of the other one. I'm using Defiance of Destiny, which Whispers of Doom, so he can curse enemies with Enfeeble, which is very nice. Defiance of Destiny with a reflected Cogwork Ring, so I'm getting 30% damage taken recouped as life, for another 22 here, that's 52% damage recouped as life. And another reflected ring with negative res and fire and chaos res, so I get him capped, 75, 75, 50. He's lacking a little bit of chaos res, but it's not a problem, he doesn't die. The only thing he dies to is probably like a Giga Juice T17 boss that shotguns or something. But otherwise, he just doesn't die. Shrink of Servitude with Wrath, and yeah, that's my Mercenary. Wrath and Zealotry, pretty good. Okay, let's go back to Hideout. Now, that's how we scale our damage. I'm using Penance Brand in my body armor. Other builds that use Penance Brand usually have like a mirror helmet or something like that. So we're scaling gem levels, crit multi, lightning damage, negative elemental resistance around enemies, and stuff like that. So let's go over the gear. Now, I do have a mirrored weapon because I dropped a mirror. This is my first mirror ever since playing the game. So when it dropped, I had to equip the Pilfering Ring because I didn't have it equipped. I don't remember on what character I had it, but I equipped it before I picked up the mirror. If I got rolled back, that would have been devastating. So yeah, I got a mirrored dagger. High spell damage, +1 all, +1 cast speed, crit multi, double damage while focused. You do not need to mirror this. You could go for a normal wand or another rune dagger. You want to focus on +1 all, +1 fizz, cast speed and crit multi. And spell damage, you can get the veiled version, which goes up to 69 or 79 or something like that. And then ditch the double damage or craft double damage while focused as on the crafting bench. If you have the money, you can go for this, or you can just go for an explode, which helps you clear. It's not as great as other builds would explode, but it gets the job done and it does help with clear a little bit. For the helmet, you want a additional fizz damage reduction mod, which this comes only from Delve. So you can either recombinate that mod to a armor base and then craft chaos res, life regeneration. You need a lot of life regen, high armor, high life, and AoE and arcane surge effect in the implicits. For my amulet, I'm using Defiance of Destiny. I catalyze it with resistances to cap my resistances. Ideally, you would like to catalyze it with life to get 24%, but whatever. I'm using a +1 endurance charge shield because we are stacking endurance charges like I mentioned earlier. With spell crit, additional damage, additional fizz damage reduction, double damage while focused, life, armor, and that's about it. You do not need the damage per endurance charge. You want a high armor base as possible. Ideally, you want 85 to get T1 additional fizz damage reduction, so you could get 8 instead of 7. But there was limited on the market when I bought them, so this is what I got. For the ring, additional maximum endurance charge with cast speed, chaos res, and you need, if you're copying this, you absolutely need the minimum endurance charges, because there's no way to generate power charges, endurance charges in this build. You cannot generate them. So we need to get a lot of minimum endurance charges. That's how we got 12. We're gonna get to that soon. So you need that endurance charge. Because with Calandra, we're getting basically 2 max endurance, 2 max minimum, right? For the chest piece, Lore Wave to counteract the downside of Transcendence. The rolls could be better, but it is what it is. You want to focus on getting +2 duration or +2 AoE. And yeah, that's about it. Or +1, +2 or something like that. Get a +3 Lore Wave if you can, or just corrupt them yourself. As you can see here, I had a little bit of fun with corrupting Lord Weaves. So that's the chest piece. For the gloves, you want the brand attachment range, chaos res, life regeneration. I got this base. I started crafting it without checking the item level. You want item level 85 for T1 life regeneration, but I kind of sell for this. High armor, life, fizz conversion to lightning, and yeah. For the boots, we're using an licensed approach. This gives us adrenaline. So adrenaline gives you 100% increased damage, 25% attack and cast speed and movement speed, and 10% additional physical damage reduction. So we'll see we're stacking a lot of physical damage reduction. Mage blood, kind of needed, obviously. For the flasks, you want 2 armor flasks. You want the granite and the basalt to get as much armor as possible. I'm rolling reduce reflected damage, regen life, armor, and crit strikes. You don't really need the crit strikes. When the enemy's on profane ground, you don't really need it, so I usually swap in the gold flask, which is pretty good. And I use Orias End for clear, but you could use Bottle Faith for single target, like Ubers and Pinnacles and stuff. But I did all the Ubers and I did them on Orias End, so the damage is pretty nutty. All right, so that's the gear. Let's go over the gems. So I'm using Frostblink for mobility. I don't have any Quicksilver Flask unless I equip this. You don't really need it because with Frostblink of Wintry Blast you're just so fast. Spell Echo, faster casting. In my helmet I got my auras, Determination, Herald, Arctic Armor, and Enlighten. You kind of need the Enlighten here. Shield is Assassin's Mark, Righteous Fire, and Empower. You kind of have to self-cast this. There's not a lot of gem slots. Now, with the most disappointing part of this build is the Anime Guardian. Like, holy, he dies. So I got an Anime Guardian, Mid Shield, Minion Life, and Empower. Honestly, I think he's only good for single target. He kind of just dies with what I got on him on mapping, Rogue Exiles, like Risk farming. He kind of dies. On Risk farming, he's actually pretty okay, but otherwise he just dies on like Rogue Exiles. I'll go into his gear later. So over here I got Automation, Convocation to just pull him closer to me, more duration, and Molten Shell. Penance brand, Swift brand, Arcane Surge because of our Ascendancy, Inspiration, Increase critical strikes, and Empower again. So I'm running 3 Empowers in this build. Alright, so about the Anime Guardian gear, I'm using Southbound, Doppelganger's Guise with reduced damage from crits, Kingmaker, a crafted pair of boots with high life, high resist, and drops Brittle Ground, and Learcast. So that's about it. Alright, let's go over the skill tree and the jewels, right? So I got a Natural Instinct over here, and I got a Militant Faith with Maxarius that gives me Transcendence. Now I got this number over here, which is 7783. So this node gives me Element Immunity, and this node gives me an additional 5% physical damage reduction, which is great. And because we have the Natural Instinct here, I am actually having 170 Devotion, so I take advantage of both Cloistered and Martyr's Might, which is great. Now, there is another Timeless Jewel that gives you Martyr's Might as well here, but I couldn't find any on the market. If you could get like 10% additional physical damage reduction here to get you over closer to 90%, that would be good as well, but you're sacrificing some HP, so there's like some give and take. I'm using a Sublime Vision with Determination for another Endurance Charge. I'm using Grand Spectrum for Frenzy, and I'm using 2 Grand Spectrum of Endurance Charges here to get us to 12%. To get us to 12 Endurance Charges. My Watcher's Eye is another additional phase damage reduction mod with crit while affected by Wrath. This works with the Mercenary aura. Over here I got a rare jewel with triple crit multi-life, and I'm using Forbidden Flesh and Flame combo which allocates Searing Purity. So, what is Searing Purity? Is this one over here. 45% of chaos damage taken as fire, 45% of chaos damage taken as lightning. So, it's huge for survivability. Like, it's mitigating 90% of chaos damage, right? And don't forget, so you're taking 90% of chaos as elemental, fire and lightning, but you're using Transcendence, so all that chaos damage is taken by armor and physical damage reduction. I mean armor, just armor, not physical damage reduction. So it's a really, really powerful point here for this ascendancy. Really, really strong. Like really, really strong. All right. For the jewels, I'm using 3 mediums with Grand Design Remarkable and Resistances. Very tight on the resistance, like very, very tight on the resistances. And yeah, for the large ones, I'm using Increased Effect, All Res, Life, Attack and Cast Speed with Physical Skills. And over here, 4% Elemental Resistances, Attack and Cast Speed. I would have liked Life there, but instead I got Energy Shield with 35% Increased Effect, but I was just too lazy to sell it and roll another one, so it is what it is. So yeah, that's the gear, that's the jewels, the gems, basically how the build works. Stack a lot of fizz damage mitigation, nullify most of the damage that's coming to you, like you can tank Searing Exarchs, you can tank Eater of Worlds, you can tank Shaper Slams, you can tank almost anything in the game. The main thing that kills you will be damage over time. But whenever you get like high damage over time, you just turn off Annihilation's approach and the regen should be more than enough to get you back up. So be quick on your feet, trigger it off. If you're taking like, if you're standing on double degen puddles or stuff like that, just turn it off and you should be fine. So yeah, that'll be it for this one. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer it to the best of my abilities. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.